It turned the whole of Sunday into a circus and almost made the game an afterthought, because all of a sudden the focus wasn't on whether Australia could beat Wales. It was on this Eddie story. Myself and Elgin Alderman from the Times kind of rushed to this fan event at a place called Wallaby House in Lyon, which was meant to be like a nice fan park where fans could sort of hear from the chief executive for War and other sort of dignitaries from Rugby Australia. Spotted Bill Pulver there, the old chairman as well. Like, it was the whole idea was it was meant to be like a pep rally essentially, and it turned into this 20 journalists turning up with phones, quizzing Phil War. Like, the sports minister spoke first. I'm not sure anyone was quite listening to what she had to say, even though it was all very pertinent, because everyone just couldn't wait to ask Phil War about the situation. Basically, the day turned into a bit of a circus, and it's no wonder that Australia's heads went, because I think the heads of everyone else had gone by the time we got to kick off, unless you were backing Wales.
Have you ever seen body language like that from a group of coaches during a game? Like hands over faces. You've seen sort of anger, and obviously we've seen anger from Jones before in both his, even in charge of England and in charge
famous gifts,
gifts. But to have that prolonged hands over mouth by multiple coaches, what if you see that on the big screen as a player? What are you thinking? You're thinking, geez, yeah, we're really messing up here. These guys think they can't help us. It must just be totally demoralising.
It means nothing now, but the mood at the captain's run the day before was very different and very kind of defiant. Not necessarily in the press comments, but when the Wallabies sort of came out, they had boombox, playing Tupac really loud. Tupac's All Eyes on Me. They could tell that the pressure was on them. They were relaxed. They were chilled out, not in a casual way that suggested they would lose. They just looked in quite a good place. And then
in the zone.
Yeah, and then boom, that story comes out. Heads obviously rattled. As soon as they lost the foothold in the game against Wales, it wasn't like there was anybody on there, because we've talked about the lack of experience so much now. It wasn't like there was an on-field general who could rally them.
I think it's maybe been a little bit more defiant since, saying, that story didn't affect us because they're not technically out yet. Fiji could lose both of their next two games, and then Australia somehow scrape through into a potential quarter-final against England.
Pigs can fly as well. Tellingly, no denial from Eddie, was there? I mean, he wouldn't address the story and sort of played dumb almost with it, but no denial. He did not say, no, that didn't happen, and I will be the Wallabies coach next year. In terms of maybe he's trying to get ahead of the game because he thinks he might be sacked, because, as we've mentioned, this is going to be the first time that Australia have failed to progress from the pool stages at the World Cup. Also, no denial from the Japanese Rugby Union, who were approached yesterday. They just refused to comment. Now, if you were them and it absolutely didn't happen, then you would say, wouldn't you? I don't know. Am I being naive?
No. I think that's a fair point. To pull back the curtain a little bit, both Charlie and Charles texted me and said, "Please send us the audio from the press conference," as I was sitting down into it, because we knew it would be a good one. The reaction in Australia has been as fierce and despondent and sort of miserable as you might expect. Bernard Foley was one of the people who was in Nice, I think, last week, was he? So he's been in the country, probably with a pair of boots back, just in case, who tweeted for the first time in ages, it didn't have to be like this. You've had calls for Jones to go. You've had former players just decrying the lack of experienced players in the squad and how unfair it is, and all these guys who are like in their mid-20s, like Wallabies players, who are going to be tarnished by this forever. It's just all a bit desperate. And Dan Schofield has written a column on the Telegraph sort of talking about, yes, like, Eddie's at fault here, but there's such wider structural issues in Australian rugby. There's a line still going there in less than 2 years. I mean, I don't think I've ever felt more sure about a 3-0 series Lions win in my entire life.
No.
I mean 3-0 and the rest. I mean,
it's 4-0.
It's going to be absolutely colossal, and it does make you wonder. I was chatting with somebody about this over the weekend. Wouldn't it almost be beneficial? It would never work from a commercial standpoint. I'd rather watch 3 games between the Lions and Fiji in Suva or sort of around Fiji than what is just going to be a total drubbing in Australia.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. It was just an upsetting night, as we've already touched on, a very upsetting night. And it remains to be said. The landscape of the sport in the country has sort of been in recession for a number of years anyway, and this is not going to help. You spoke to anyone who knew Australian rugby last week, they said that game against Wales was absolutely massive. Such a big game, such a sort of titanic day for the sport in the country, and how important it is, and how so momentous for the sport to recover, and then for them to crumble like that is just very sad. You see jibes on social media, which I know should always be taken with a pinch of salt, but also there's no smoke without fire, of how it's the fourth code of a ball sport, of footy in Australia, behind league and NRL and soccer. You've got declining participation numbers at grassroots level. You've got declining attendances at Super Rugby. People don't really care about Super Rugby. Yes, the Wallabies' attendances are still healthy, and seemingly the population still get behind the Wallabies, but you do fear that now, after this, will the loyalty and will the passion be as fierce? Maybe not. I mean, obviously we're a long way away, and we're trying to predict the future, so we have no idea, but you do fear for them a little bit, don't you?
We do. It's bad when we all feel this bad for Australia, because that they might not necessarily feel the same way about England if the tables were if the tables were turned.
And also, just as an aside, I've been the bigger man here. I've risen above the Eddie Jones.
Proud of you.
The Eddie Jones jibes. I've rarely addressed them, but I'm going to have to on this occasion. Just go, where are you, Eddie?